everybody. I'm Traven Rice. I'm the arts and culture editor and co-founder of The Lowdown, and we're excited to be back in 2025 here on the Lower East Side with another year of the Lowdown Culture Cast. And we're talking to all different types of downtown culture changers from all different eras of the Lower East Side. And I'm really excited today to be talking with Stuart Ginsberg. He's the director, writer, producer of a documentary that recently came out titled It's A to Z, The Art of Arleen Schloss. And Stuart made his directorial debut with this film. He previously served as an associate producer for two independent feature films. Followers, the first of the two, received national distribution by Castle Hill Productions, and he later served as the associate producer for Shockwave Dark Side, an independent science fiction film. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And you are also an adjunct professor?
Yes, I am.
Montclair State University School of Communication. And sounds like you started in PR, is that right? For film?
I did. Yes, I did start in PR for film, Broadway, and entertainment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I watched the film, and I have to explain a little bit of this connection with Arleen Schloss. We did a piece on her back in 2011. So I was able to meet her back then, and I know Toby Elkin wrote that piece, and I think that's how you met Toby, who now is an associate producer on this film.
Yes, and she's been really helpful, yes.
So thank you, Toby.
Yes, exactly.
So the film, can you talk a little bit about, it's been a long history and sort of what spurred you to tell the story of Arleen and her art, and she really was kind of a cultural hub. Her place became a real cultural hub.
Yes, and that's how I first got to meet her and know about her. Her place was called A's, and it was part of the New York City loft art scene, in the 70s and 80s. That was huge here in this area, Lower East Side, Chinatown, Soho, East Village, Greenwich Village area. And so her place had people like Eric Bogosian, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Thurston Moore, the original members of Sonic Youth, and a slew of other artists that you may not be household names, but they're well known. And how I got to meet her is I used to work at School of Visual Arts. You said I had been in PR. I was the director of comms there. And we just started talking, and she was a thesis advisor there. And she told me about her space, and I thought, I would like to see it. So I went over, and she showed me all these booklets and all these other items. And then she started telling me about her artwork. And, she was one of the first performance artists to perform at the Museum of Modern Art. She was at a place called Ars Electronica, which is a technology art show in Linz, Austria, where you show art that has never been seen before with technology. So all of that, and that's why I thought it would be a great topic.
Yeah, sure. So this was, she was living in what now we call Soho, but, in this big industrial loft on Broome Street, beginning in the 70s.
Yes, 1970, and it was a 2,400 square foot loft space. And she had a magnificent backyard, which you don't see in New York really anymore. Mm-hmm. And it used to be a mannequin factory.
Yeah. And so you hear her talking about the scene that we've all heard about back in the day, but really at that time there were just lots of sort of abandoned buildings, bombed out kind of. Every other place might have been empty. There wasn't a lot of money, in the city. And it's known for this sort of creative cultural time when, people could really afford to just, I think, take a lot of risk. And it sounds to me like she was doing her own really interesting performance art. But more than that, she was sort of connecting other artists.
Exactly. And so given what you had just said, so for instance, the storefront for art and architecture, which is very well known now on Kenmare Street, I believe it's there now, it was an empty storefront. So she and her friends all decided to create this event called A to Z, 26 performances in a row every night. Imagine that many artists, 4 artists a day for 26 days.
Wow.
So Yes, it's true. It was cheap to live, cheap to eat. People would have part-time jobs, and the rest of the time you could focus on your art.
I know, we really just all wish it was still like that, although we might be glamorizing it because it wasn't exactly like safe, or, it was hard. It was a hard time. I know. But it sounds so great creatively.
Well, creatively, yes. But yes, there were definitely, and we have some shots in the documentary of drug deals and of ladies of the night, if I should be a little hookers.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was, but the thing is about her work and the work of the day and all the other artists, they would use their environment and put whatever was in their environment into their art. So it was video art, performance art, painting, all of that.
And we're talking about back then the video art, the new format was VHS, I think, right?
Yes, VHS, high 8, 8mm. Well, she also shot. She was experimental, so it wasn't just performance art and getting people together and being this great connector of people, but it was also, she was like, oh, I want to experiment with video formats. So Super 8 film, high 8. Then there's high 8mm. She said, and reel to reel VHS, and she kept shooting on these different formats.
It's amazing. And so it sounded to me like she was able to experiment, collaborate, and then it became kind of known that was a place where you could have, it was a party in a way, but also constant performances, right?
Yes, performances. She would have people just hanging out too, and there would be cookouts and barbecues and poetry readings, musicians. Even when we get into the 90s, we have a little bit of it in the documentary, but she is the dawn of the internet age. She put websites on the wall and back then that was really new. And so she would just have parties, and you're right, she would have just people coming to create. And it was quite fascinating.
The footage, it's so lovely. It's like an amazing archive of all these names we know now, sort of New York artists that are well known in different formats. But she would perform, she would sing, and then there would be musicians and dancers, and people would singing, and it just looked like it kept evolving and evolving. And to me, one of the things that I found so lovely about it is it has a very joyful feeling. It doesn't have like a performative, like serious artist kind of feeling. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not self-conscious.
Right.
It's very joyful.
Yes, well, thank you. Well, that's Arleen. She is that type of person, and all she just said was, we're just doing it to have fun. And even when I interviewed Eric Bogosian, who came, and you think of him as a very serious person, he said the same thing. We just wanted to have fun. No one knew, and some people say that in a documentary, no one knew this would lead anywhere. They all were just getting together. Actually, the East Village and Lower East Side artists didn't really like Soho or wanted to be part of the Soho scene. And they were just feeling like no one's going to pay attention to this. And all of a sudden they did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Basquiat hung out there.
Yeah, he was 19 years old, and Arleen tells this really amazing story of he sort of needed a place to stay, so she lent him a place to stay. And actually, she slept on the couch and said, you could sleep in my bed. That she was that nice. And she said to me, he was just walking around in his pajamas, hanging stuff up, and then he played the first night of A's. He played bagpipes, and we say in the documentary that it was so bad that people started leaving. So maybe that's why he's not a musician. I don't know. I shouldn't say that on tape, but he really, he experimented. It was the whole idea of experimentation. So he experimented with other people like Michael Holman and other people who are well known now, Al Diaz, and it was called Test Pattern, then Gray, and that was the whole thing. And Arleen has tape from that. She was walking around. She even said, no one knew, again, who these people really were or going to be. So you hear her talking on the tape, and as she's talking, he's playing in the background.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so it became kind of a series where it would be a night put together with different performances. And there were posters that she made and that got made by different artists. And those posters became kind of this like amazing collection and archive.
Yes, right. So part of Arleen's archive is in the NYU Fails Library, and they have that collection of those posters. But a lot of these posters are being resold for money. It's really quite fascinating. And one of the people who made a lot of it is a person named Todd Jorgensen, who was really also a big influenced person in the scene with Arleen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell us about the process of this project, because it's been a real saga.
It has been. I know we only have a half hour, but I started way back in, I'll just be very brief, in 2007. That's when I met Arleen. And I, at the time, was a master's student at the New School, doing documentary and media studies. And then I started talking to Arleen, and I really liked this idea to do this documentary. And I grew up around New York City. I grew up in New Jersey. So yes, as you were saying, so fascinated by all these people that were down here, and why, and how did they congregate, and what did they work on, and why did they do these things. And we sat one summer literally on her couch and on the floor looking at, you talk about VHS tapes, 600 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And fast forwarding a lot of times, and she would say, okay, stop, that person's interesting. This is what that means. This is what this means. And I would write and I would type on my laptop all these different things. And then a few years would go by, and then as fits and starts happen, we had COVID, and COVID kind of giveth and taketh away, as I say, because we're sitting around not doing much, and I had shot a lot of things, and I had people say to me, okay, I want to help you. So we mentioned Toby Elkin. I have a great editor named Victor Acevedo. All came together and really helped push this forward.
Oh, so it was really COVID that kind of gave you that opportunity to say, okay, let's finish this.
Yes, yeah.
But Stuart, you say on the website that you spent 10 years with Arleen, like almost every weekend, not every weekend, but like 10 years looking at this footage with her. Is that right?
Yes, we looked at footage, and we looked at, she had all these different papers, but things were disorganized. So I helped organize, one of the people who helped organize her archives, and just, she had papers, and I looked through this stuff. And then she also, no secret, or she had MS too. So I was helping her out that way too, like going shopping for her and all that. So I became really good friends with her.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't necessarily just the documentary project. It did become sort of a matter of how do we archive this, and it's like such a vast amount of sort of a record of downtown arts. It sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just street scenes, things like older people walking down the street, old communities that don't exist anymore. She, again, had a lot of photographs of her place, her loft, other events around. In this downtown area, there was a movement called the Rivington School, which she was part of, and documented some of that. Of course, other people documented that. Storefront for architecture. She performed with other people at Danceteria. She brought people together there. She had a show called 30 Second Show, where you had to perform. It was 100 people performing, and they only had 30 seconds to perform a piece.
Whoa.
So yeah, so all that type of creative energy. So she really had a lot of amazing information.
And so I didn't realize she was the first performance artist at MoMA.
I misspoke, not first. One of because what MoMA did, from what my research, this is what I mean by research, they didn't, in the 70s, they didn't have a lot of performance art there. So once every 3 or 4 years, they would have performance art. So she was in 78. So I think, she was one of, I don't want to say the first,
Yeah, but still, I think that's really awesome.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, even when I was talking to her, she got a little aggravated. She says, that we were put in this room and not in the main hallway. And I said, well, Arleen, that's because they didn't think of it as art, and so, but she understood that's what she was always doing, is always pushing the boundary, always being an experimental artist. And when you experiment, maybe you're ahead of your time a bit.
And always very interested in sound and voice and music, but also experimenting with her voice.
Yeah, absolutely. She was all about, that's why it's called it's A to Z, the Art of Arleen Schloss, because when I first met her, she said to me, I performed the alphabet. I said, what does that mean? I didn't understand what that meant. And it just means that she would speak in this kind of precursor of rap, I would say, and just with rhymes. And like that Museum of Modern Art performance, it's 10 minutes of her just free associating words, no script, and just this kind of cadence. It was really fascinating.
Oh, I didn't know there wasn't a script. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I assumed she had sort of like rehearsed it.
Well, yeah, but she what I mean by that is that she looked at the art on the walls of MoMA, so she would just talk about that, and so she did that.
Sort of just what was coming up or what was in front of her.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I saw Thurston Moore is mentioned here.
Yes, Thurston Moore met Kim Gordon through Arleen and this other person named Todd Jorgensen through A's. And Thurston was in a group called the Coachmen, and he was playing there, and then Kim Gordon was playing there too. And then the original drummer of Sonic Youth, Richard Edson, lived upstairs in the loft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was she performing by the time you met? Was she still performing?
Not really. She was starting to get into group shows. So there was one up in Harlem and at the White Box Gallery downtown. And so it was more of a retrospective. Well, while she was there, she would sometimes perform. And so I don't know if you would call that an official performance or not, but yes, sometimes she would do that.
She started to get recognized as far as her body of work.
Exactly. Like during the 2010s, I would say, around 2006 to 2014, and even now, she was put into shows. So one is the White Box. The other one was at this place up in Harlem. She had screenings in Sweden. I forget the name of the show. Hauser and Wirth. She had a little display by an artist named Sirvani Sir. So we've noticed that she's getting a little bit more attention.
A bit late, as it tends to be for female artists in this world still, I would say.
Yes, yeah.
So you had been working so closely with her, and you were, it sounds like you were enmeshed in all of these archives and so much footage. How did you decide to sort of focus it? I mean, to me, that would be the ultimate challenge.
Well, yes. As I said, I had a good team with me, and what I thought of first was the opening. Someone had said, when I met Arleen, she was a big star. I couldn't believe it. I went, okay, that's the beginning. And then I wanted to have it in the reverse alphabetical order as an homage to her. So I knew I was going to show this one piece at this place called Ars Electronica. And a lot of it was just, to be honest, access to this stuff, what I could digitize, and I knew the different topics I wanted to do. So I knew she was experimental. So I thought, okay, I'm going to focus on A's, number one, and all the events and all the people she pulled together. Number two, I'm going to focus on her performance art, her video art, and then sound art. And then her use of technology. There's also the theme of how technology changed art and how she experimented. So that was my through line with it.
It was clear that she was always kind of pushing that forward, and she was experimenting early with electronics and digital material.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. She went to a place called Science Faction Incorporated in 1985, and they had lasers, these green lasers. And at the time, now we see lasers all the time, but at the time people thought I was just nuts. And we have some footage of her she has these big goggles on, because the laser could be dangerous to the eyes. And so she performed that with those goggles on there. So she really was into that.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah.
And you do say in the film there's a bit of a bittersweet ending here. She's still with us, but hasn't been doing well for quite a while.
Right. Unfortunately, as I said, she has MS, and then she unfortunately fell down the steps of her loft. and has a traumatic brain injury. And we're taping on near Martin Luther King's birthday weekend, and so it's 11 years from 2025 that she had that injury, and she's still alive. She's living in Roosevelt Island, and I see her from time to time, and showed her the documentary. But I don't know if it went into her, if she really realizes it. Unfortunately.
Yeah. How has that been for you? That must be hard now.
Yeah, I mean, I wish she was here, not me, to be honest, talking about it. But I feel good that I could be an evangelist for her and for her work. So, it's a little bittersweet, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when was it finished? And I know it's tell us where we can see it. I know it's starting to have some screenings in festivals. Yes,
it was finished. It was finished 2022. And yes, it's been in festivals in Europe. I mean, this is the type of work that a lot of people in Europe really love and gravitate toward too, the avant-garde, underground kind of work. And they're very fascinated with this time period in New York City. So it won Best Documentary at the Solaris Film Festival in Helsinki. There's an independent film festival. It's called the Berlin Indie Film Festival, not the Berlin Independent Film Festival. But it's still that one Best Director. I'm very happy about that. And then it's going to be at the Anthology Film Archives as part of New Filmmakers. And that's just an online festival, so anyone could see that. And then this January 31st, it's going to be at the New Jersey Independent Film Festival. That's also online, and will be down at New Brunswick and Rutgers. And then we're making our West Coast premiere at the Venice Contemporary Institute of Art at the Fine Art Film Festival.
Oh, great. That's fantastic.
Yes. I'm so excited. Yeah.
That's really great. I wanted to ask before we wrap up, it was such a big piece of your life.
Yes.
What would you say is your most surprising kind of takeaway now that you're looking at it, looking back and saying, I finished this, here it is?
That's a good question. I think I can't believe I did it. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, if you told me this would happen, I would say, I don't believe you.
Really?
Yeah. Also, the big takeaway is how open and friendly all these artists are. And how I think when you're on the outside looking in, you think the art world, and maybe people believe this, is very closed off to any newcomer, but it is the exact opposite. One time I went to a poetry reading of a friend of Arleen's who invited me. It was her birthday, and all the other people around there who were reading poetry said, "Hey, are you going to read?" And I was like, "No, why would I? I'm not a poet," but they were just anyone. They wanted anyone to be involved, and that was the whole thing of Arleen. And I hope we could be that way as people in general, not just in the art world. Just be open to people, give someone a chance.
Well, I couldn't have asked for a better ending there to this conversation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.